Brian, you good?
I'm good.
Okay, I'm gonna click the button. Here we go.
All right, good morning. Welcome to the November 20th meeting of the Chenango County IDA Board of Directors. We'll go ahead and roll call ourselves in.
Aaron here.
Ryan here.
Woodford here.
Burton here.
Every time you change the order.
Depends on where you sit. It is the mission of the Chenango County Industrial Development Agency to advance the health, prosperity, and welfare of the county's citizens by helping to retain, create, and attract businesses through appropriate investments and incentives. Need a motion to approve the minutes of the October 28th, 2024 regular meeting.
So
Need a second?
Second.
Any discussion, omissions, or corrections? Hearing none, we'll vote.
Graham and I.
Ryan, I.
Woodford, I.
Burton, aye. We do not have Kathy Joe today, so we'll just go through the financials real quick. Our total assets, it looks like we're slightly below where we were end of year, or as of October 31st, 2024. Where are we? No, we're slightly ahead. I'm sorry, these backwards to me. So we're slightly ahead of where we were December 31st, 2023. It looks like most of that is due to accounts receivable. Again, and the Intrify account, the interest growth of $41,000. It does, remember with the accounts receivable now, we include all pilot fees that are due throughout the life of a pilot in our accounts receivable. Accounts payable, I don't see anything glaring there. Does anybody have any questions that we could get answers from Kathy Joe on? Okay. We did transfer over last week out of the Intrify enough money to cover the purchase of East Main Street building, also known as the former Preferred Building. So 200,000 was transferred out. I think final price was 182.
Around, yes, 182, 183. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that closing's done. We are the proud new owners of the building. Aged receivables, again, nothing major here except for Highbridge. We did ask at the last meeting for a follow-up on the Highbridge aged receivables. Have we heard anything back from them on their 94,000?
Not to my knowledge, Brian.
Okay, let's make sure we stay on them.
Yep.
If it gets to the point that it gets to over 90 days, we'll start the process of we'll get the attorneys involved with letters and then the process of revocation.
Yep.
Everybody good with that? Mm-hmm. Okay, count aged payables, nothing out of the ordinary here. We got a little bill that's a little late to principal design, which
I do have that.
Okay, so we'll be caught up on the bills. Statement of activities. Let's see. Year-to-date budget, we're at 219,000 and we're tracking at 213, which is about 5,000 below budget on revenues. That should make up by the end of the year, hopefully. And let's see, expenditures. Year-to-date actuals 23, year-to-date budget's 45, so we're better than budget by 21,000 at this point. Which again is a good place to be in, but we want that to be tightened up a little bit. Any questions there? Yes.
Ryan, just one comment. If we go back to the age receivables.
Yeah.
Because we discussed this in our last meeting, should we be talking about initiating some legal action here at this point?
Not until they get beyond 90. They, over the last couple of years, there's been some back and forth of when that payment's due, when it should be billed, when they should really pay it. We've always got the attorneys involved. We give them, once they get to that 90-day, Mark,
So we
then
have
we
some
send-
history with them.
Yep, then we send the attorneys a message to, hey, put some pressure on them. We've ended up with the check so far, but if for some reason it gets longer than that 90, we start the process up. Good question. Also, just to speak towards the IntraFi account, as you're all aware, interest rates are dropping for the entire country. So the IntraFi, you can expect the IntraFi interest rates to go down a little bit at this point, okay? Still significantly more than what we were earning in a checking account. And that's the end of the financials. Does anybody have any other questions, comments, or concerns? Need a motion to approve the financials?
So moved.
Okay, first by RC, second by Pete. And any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote.
Raymond, aye.
Ryan, I.
Woodford, aye.
Bert and I. Bills and invoices, again, the usual suspects on there. You'll notice that principal design, that aged receivable is in the amount due. Need a motion to approve bills and invoices?
So moved.
First by Pete,
Second.
second by RC. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote.
Raymond,
Ryan, I.
Woodford, aye.
Bert and I. All right, should we skip to our guests and let them present at this point?
We can do that, yeah, yep, wherever we're comfortable with, yep.
Okay. Do you want to introduce them?
So Shane, I'll
Yeah,
have you
yeah,
introduce it, yep.
so, we've had a contract for the past 18 months with Take Charge New York to look at microgrids across the county, specifically for businesses and to help our residents with electricity costs. So today it's Chuck Schwerin and Chris Cheney from Take Charge New York. We're gonna do kind of a presentation on what they're looking for and kind of about the program.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you for
Do you
having
just want to go around the table real quick and introduce ourselves?
Pete Raymond, Town Green.
Taylor Zito, HR Director at Golden Linux College.
Martha Ryan, Public and School Liaison for BOCES.
R.C. Woodford, Chenango County, retired.
And Brian Burton, Chairman of the IDA MBT.
Well, thanks for having us. So I think there is a handout sort of describing the Don't look at it now.
All right.
Should have mentioned it.
For light reading when we're done. Let me start with a little anecdote. So we're from Acadia Energy and Take Charge New York, which is a 501c3 headquartered in Auburn. And but I live in Ithaca, and I have a modest house, about 2,000 square feet. And my neighbor, a couple doors down, has the same size house. And he asked me once, we were having dinner, "What's your electric bill on average?" And I said, worst case in the winter, maybe $125, something like that. And he said, "Well, mine's close to 1,000. And I've got the same size house." I said, "Bring me your bill." He brought it over, and I don't know how much you've scrutinized your electric bill, but it's made up of two components. You pay for the electricity, and you pay to get the electricity to your house. Transmission and distribution, T&D. And often the T&D is more than the actual cost of the electrons. And he was paying 47 cents a kilowatt hour, whereas most of us are paying, combined maybe, 10, 12, 14 cents, something like that, depending on off-peak and on-peak. And the reason was that he was on community solar, where you might get a 5 or 10% discount when you sign up, but he'd been on it a couple of years, and now he's paying 47 cents. So you have to get off this. But that's sort of the hidden cost of community solar, and why I think there's animosity in communities, and sometimes moratoria about solar, because the benefits are not nearly what they're cracked up to be. Why is that? Because in general, developers come in, they'll buy farmland, they'll put in a solar farm, they'll send the power either downstate, or even if they offer it in community solar, that program is open, let's say it's NYSEG, to anybody in the NYSEG catchment area. It doesn't have to be in this county. So the benefits are not staying local, but the costs are all being borne locally. You probably haven't paid attention as we do about what the expected cost to upgrade the grid will be in the coming years. The estimates are as high as $60 billion just for New York State alone, of which 10%, $6 billion, have already been agreed to in the rate case that the utilities put in last year. So 10% of the probable cost are now being borne by us, with another 90% to come. It's a tsunami coming about the cost of getting the electricity to our homes and businesses. So is there an alternative? Yes. And that's what attracted me to Acadia Energy, was the notion of developing microgrids, which could be solar but don't have to be solar. But let's say, for sake of argument, it's solar, located in a community where all the benefits stay in the community, including running our own lines to businesses or the grid, but to businesses behind the meter, so that the user is not paying for that transmission and distribution. We'll amortize the cost over 30 years for running those lines. So basically cutting the cost of energy in half. And more than that, as T&D rises, as our, our grid upgrade costs rise as well. So what's a microgrid? A microgrid could be a solar field with energy storage, backup storage, but not islanded, still connected to the grid. But our mission and our model is to work with folks like Shane and Matt, who are terrific to work with, by the way, they're just awesome. To identify first, publicly owned properties that are underutilized, let's say a closed landfill, where the highest and best use could be generating energy for the community. Also looking at potential private landowners who would be interested in participating, again, whereby at least 40% of the power would go to the community, and the community decides how that allocation should work. And then the rest could be behind the meter to, industry, which is a great business attraction model. It's also obviously an immediate benefit to those businesses to save on the cost of energy. And I believe you're part of a muni in this community, or at least some, muni it gives you awesome rates for electricity, but with a cap. And as you grow, if you exceed that cap, everybody gets hit. So it puts a gating factor on industry that wants to expand, like you guys. I think you've got plans to expand. We've been talking to you folks. And rightly, you should be concerned about blowing out that cap, and it affects everybody. So a year ago, we were fortunate enough to win what we applied for. We just recently received a grant from the Appalachian Regional Commission to fund feasibility studies on sites in Chenango, Otsego, and Delaware counties. And the goal is no cost to the community. None of this is a cost to the community. But our purpose here is to identify properties that might be feasible for microgrids. Then it's up to you if you want to develop them. Chris, you want to just say about what we're looking for when we do a feasibility study?
I'd be pleased to, and thanks for moving us up into the agenda a little bit, Brian. I appreciate
Like
you.
get rid of it.
You're one. Thanks for being here. Chuck just talked about numbers. I'm more down to earth. I'm the land guy. And the first thing I want to say, and the only thing if I only leave you with one thing, it's we're all about highest and best use of land. I live in an agricultural community. Fesco's got more cows than the town I live in has people. We just at one farm. So, you know, I just want to make that perfectly clear. I get along with farmers. You know, they want to farm, they farm. The other thing I want to just reiterate what Chuck said is that please don't pigeonhole us as a solar company either. We're a microgrid company, and that's multifaceted. Solar oftentimes is an element, sometimes it's the key element, sometimes it's not there at all. Storage is also a critical element, battery storage usually, but there are other kinds. And we're talking to a couple of potential off-takers here in the county that might use geothermal or consider thermal offtake to supplement a modest solar array, if you will. So those are just a couple of key points that I always like to make sure everybody is aware, because it's easy to just put somebody in a box and think, okay, well, that's what they do. It's really hard to put Acadia in a box because every project is different. When it comes to the land, it is pretty straightforward. We do like, you know, everyone wants a shovel-ready site, but they're few and far between. The nice thing about what we do is we can do site work. We can prepare land. But one of the key things is we do want to have property within 5 miles of wherever the primary off-taker or an interconnection to the grid, because as Chuck said, these are not standalone, these are not islands. They can be, and that's one of the benefits of a microgrid, but they do have to be connected to the grid. That's part of the deal we have in the country. It doesn't matter where you are, unless you're really remote. So there's a radius within which we like to work. Obviously, ravines don't work. Watersheds don't work, although wetlands do. So again, every project is different, and we take a good hard look at topography. We take a good hard look at proper land use, and that's just an entry point. And again, I got to compliment Matt and his colleague Allison and Shane. People have just been wonderful in this county. We wish that most were as easy to work with.
So I guess we invite you to think about potential candidates. We're trying to firm up a list. On our grant, we proposed finding 8 potential sites amongst the 3 counties. It's not, how that gets divided up will depend on the properties themselves. And to get that done, within this year, so that decisions can be made about whether you want to go forward with development. We hope that Acadia Energy would be, the choice for developing, but that's certainly not, a guarantee. Stretch. So again, we're not asking for anything other than cooperation, collaboration.
And again, it's a feasibility study too, so there's no need for everybody to think that all of a sudden the lease values and price per acre, they're going to inch upward. We operate under strict confidence when it gets to that point.
Any
Just
questions?
a feasibility study we're talking about.
So many of our communities, especially along the Route 12 corridor, there's a ton of land that's in a flood zone that we can't build on. We're to the point where backfilling to build isn't necessarily an option either, because it's already changed the flood level within our cities and townships with some of the buildings that have gone up in that corridor. What's the potential for use of
You can
that?
float photovoltaics and not impact the benefits of a wetland. So that is on the table. Yes, it's more expensive for us, but it is not off the table.
And there's a difference between a flood zone and a wetland too, as well. So
Right, to your point, right, a flood zone isn't necessarily wet. Right? We can even do wetland.
And obviously, the cities downstream of a lot of this. We've done some homework, and Shane and his people have been real helpful on that. Thank you, Matt. So we're not damming rivers. Yeah, we're not messing with it. It's water flow.
Issue with the backfill, right? Places where the water used to overflow the banks and settle and keep those floodwaters minimal, that no longer exist. Pushing it into communities like Green, Sherburne, Norwich, whenever it rains.
Couple of other points we're sensitive to when we get these questions. What about when you get to the end of life of these projects, are you going to leave us holding back? No, part of what we set aside through bond generally would be funds to take care of decommissioning, if that's what the choice is, the life of those projects. And secondly, from an aesthetic standpoint, we work with landscape architects to put a buffer so that if there are concerns about, I don't want to be driving by a solar farm. You can put berms, you can plant trees, the edge. That's part of the expectation as well. It's on a hill, if you can see it from far away, okay, that's the limits to what we can do. But that's sort of part of the whole plan. But the feasibility study piece is different. It's just looking at the viability of property to support, as well as looking at who'd be interested in the power coming from. So that's all part of it. That would be part of the economic analysis. We use an outside third-party engineering firm, so it's we're at arm's length from the decision, and they're looking at all aspects of political, economic, and environmental aspects of the property to see whether it can support what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We present you the results and go forward.
What's the minimum size of the property you're looking for?
Good question. What would you say? It depends.
Yeah, on some of the grant work, there's a 40-acre minimum. I can look at 25, and I can look at smaller parcels also, but 22, 25 is usually the starting point, and then up to 150.
Yeah.
You get into terrain, there aren't that many parcels that are much bigger than that. So
if the community is let's say this grant didn't exist, if you were interested in doing a feasibility study and you wanted to apply for a fast New York grant to pay for that feasibility study, because that's certainly one of the things that we do. There is a 40-year figure.
Right. Yeah.
But there are other Empire State Development monies where that does not exist. However, a match does exist in that program. So whereas fast, there's no match in the other development project. It's a shovel-ready project, but yes, there will be a match, but no 40-year minimum. But for this grant, there's no limit. So it's just, is it feasible? If it was 2 acres, would it be worth the juice, worth the squeeze?
Right. The other thing also, to be clear, we're not utility scale. So we're not going in like they are out in the flatter parts of the state, up towards Buffalo, or where there's farms that have 7,000-8,000 acres, and they're turning over 1,000, 1,500 acres to a solar array. That's not what we're talking about. Those are the projects that get under a lot of people's skin for whatever reason.
I will say, we've met with a few local large businesses already, and a couple of them have had proposals sent their way. So it's not like this is a brand new thing in Chenango County. We've been working on it. We have been into businesses themselves. So I think the reason, Sal, we wanted to be here is that, as we're thinking about, the microns of the world, NENY with battery hub, that businesses are starting to move this way. It'd be nice to have a site ready, let alone with a microgrid that can power them, with, be potentially off the grid to save them some funding. That'd be a very attractive way to attract some businesses to Chenango County.
So I hear microgrid, I think small, but when you just stated acreage, it's as big and bigger than a lot of the projects we've approved already through the IDA for pilots and whatnot. Is the difference, the solar power states here locally, is that what makes it a microgrid? It's the micro of what it's serving, not the size of it. Was I? Okay.
Well, so the grid writ large is national, right, or statewide. A microgrid is self-contained. But, as Chris said, we still want to connect to the grid. What this is doing is reducing the pressure on the grid to support all of everybody's talking about electrifying everything, right? One more point, there's a mandate in New York State where all school districts have to be completely their bus fleets have to be electrified by 2035. And there are incentives to help purchase those buses. But who's thinking about who's going to power those buses once they're in your fleet? One, it's really expensive because, as I said, the T&D portion of the bill is going to be skyrocketing, and that's not budgeted yet. So if you can buy, and you can't have, fossil fuel buses after that year. So you're going to have this fleet, and you're going to be juggling to keep them all on the road. If you had a microgrid adjacent to a bus garage, let's say, or within 5 miles, and we're running our own lines to that bus garage, then you're giving yourself the ability to power that whole fleet at half the cost of what you would otherwise be paying. And again, no cost to the community. Plus, we're sharing revenue with the community. This rule of thumb, for every sort of 10 megawatt project that we do, expect the county writ large, I'm not sure where the money would go, but it would be about $83,000 a year for every 10 megawatt project. That's a combination of assuming that we're leasing property and also sharing revenue from the sale of that electricity. So the purpose of microgrid is the overarching principle is the power stays here, unless you wanted it to go somewhere else. But we're not going to find. There are plenty of candidates in New York City who are paying a lot more than we do here, who need green energy for lots of reasons to meet their goals. But we're upstate folks, and we feel like we're paying the freight for upgrading the grid. We're not seeing the benefits from generating that power here, and that's not right.
It reminds me a lot of the one in Bainbridge that you guys had the public hearing for, where people were saying that we're not getting the benefits here, we're getting all the impacts, and this kind of alleviates that.
Yeah, that was definitely a concern with the local community in Bainbridge. They weren't getting any long-term benefit of the actual production of electricity to themselves, right? And I know, like the Evans Farm, you could hook up to and whatnot, but it was very small. I think they capped it at like 500 homes or something like that. So, yeah.
And again, with the community solar, once that's fully subscribed, and you should say, maybe there are only 100 homes in this county that could fit into that, and everybody else is in another county. That's not what we're talking about. It's giving solar a bad name.
I'm sorry. So Shane, as part of this feasibility study, and I don't know how possible that is, but the existing pilots that we have with some of this organization, would it be worth exploring what is their commitment to the larger grid, and if they could become a part of this microgrid?
I would think that because all those agreements are in place and they're very long-term agreements,
I see.
that would be
So there may
that'd
not
be
be a
difficult
way,
to,
even with excess energy or anything, there's not a way.
no, because they're going to want to sell it back to the grid. And, that's how they're going to make their money too, is selling it back. So.
You mentioned the minimum lot size. What kind of megawatt output? I mean, what size output?
Good question. So for every 5 acres, you can generate about a Now, wind, for every 60 acres, you can generate 1 megawatt. Just as a comparison.
Reference, like one of the businesses we've talked to, you can do heat capture as well. So it's not necessarily, you have to install something on the property. Like a manufacturing business that generates a lot of heat, that could be a potential for energy. So if you think about, I don't know, just name one, Chobani, I don't know, they probably create a lot of heat with their manufacturing process of cooking. That could be a potential opportunity.
That's right. Rather than venting it, that could be a source for charging the batteries for storage. Batteries don't have to be lithium ion, which is I think what you guys use, which is great in certain applications, but really expensive. If we were going to do battery backup for a microgrid, it can be done, but there are alternatives such as sodium, carbon, where you're heating, a material. And so if you've got excess heat and you can direct it to that battery, you can make the system more efficient.
And you have a couple of industries that come to mind, and a good part of your water discharge actually is not backed up.
Point is, this is not a one-trick pony. As Chris said, every project is different, and that's where the sort of creativity comes into play.
Yeah, there are a couple of things already that I'd like to circle back to, because we keep focusing on industry and business, which is great, it's job retention and job creation, of course. But Chuck mentioned high schools. I'd like to throw hospitals in. Is this Guthrie country?
UHS.
Okay, so there's, hospitals, they need electricity and they need reliable 24/7 uninterrupted and level power. And then the other item too, just to throw a wrinkle in things. The pilots might be on solar projects, period. Those projects might be sold. And then they might be incorporated into another project, namely a microgrid. So I hate to throw a blanket no on anything. It has to be researched, gotta look into it.
And that's what thank you for answering that. I was hoping that, if nothing else, we can identify what is the contract, and does it end at some point, or if there's any opportunity to insert something open.
And not just what is the contract, but is the holder of that contract open to divestment?
Oh.
Never know. You never know.
And just because I'm curious, so things like, for example, this heat energy generation, that will require the feasibility to identify those contracts.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
So it could be geothermal, it could be solar, wind. I mean, we've even talked to companies about the anaerobic digester. We've got a lot of farms, big farms, that's a potential for creating energy.
That's fantastic.
Keep an open mind on everything when you think about what the feasibility study might be used for.
We work with a waste energy company that uses technology called pyrolysis. So it's not incineration, there's no emission, but it breaks down the municipal and solid waste or the medical waste into sand and water and electricity.
No emissions.
No emissions. It fits where it fits. It requires a certain amount of volume to make it efficient, and that limits where you can put it. But that's also part of the mix. Where some projects, that may be a part of the solution, and others no. But again, we are technology agnostic. We're not a solar company. We're a microgrid company looking at everything that's available, which means we're not tied to those vendors.
Now, there's obviously a generation component on a locality, but there's separate and distinct distribution lines to deliver that power to an end user. I mean, are these lines typically run along the road, so you have an icing on one side of the road, and the power lines on the other side of the road with another carrier?
It depends.
We'll use their poles where we can, and have to put in our own poles where we must.
I hate not to answer a question, but many of them are answers to questions. So,
Look, I mean, that's
Yeah,
an
okay.
expensive piece, right? But that's why, as Shane said, we look within 5 miles. The reason is that the Public Service Commission has blessed, in very few cases, this has happened, there's precedent for microgrid to run their own lines within 5 miles. But it's like $1 million a mile, you know, so you don't want to go turn that. And again, we're not asking for that money from the community or the off-taker. There's enough to go around, and we're not, you know, we need to keep the lights on, but we think we can share, we must share with the community if we're gonna raise all boats.
And will the feasibility study also identify exactly how we may support you from the IDA?
Not the feasibility study, that's kind of more the beforehand, before the feasibility study is more like, you know, what projects might be, you know, working on now, or could we create a project?
And that's what I mean, will we get kind of an idea of how we may support?
Well, I guess
this
what we'd
and-
like is, you know, if you know of properties that might be suitable to be evaluated, that you own, you know, you don't have to, but if you control them, the key here is site control. We need approval and blessing from whoever controls that site. We're not looking to buy or lease sites in a feasibility study, we're looking for collaboration. So if you had a closed landfill that you own, or the county does, you know, and so this would be a potential candidate, then we'll look at, well, you know, how far is it from that landfill to potential off-takers? What's it gonna cost us to connect to the grid and to connect to those off-takers? Does it make economic sense based on the size of the site? You know, but you may know of private landowners who might be interested in being off-takers, who might know of property adjacent or nearby that they could either buy or lease, or we could buy or lease. There could be potential sites for generating power. Again, it could serve the off-taker as well as the community. So, look, we do use the grid. If we're gonna send this power to residents, we're not running our own lines to every house. So we're using the grid for that fraction. But because we can sell the power wholesale, we can again, keep the price lower than what a community solar is doing. And again, getting back to where I started this with the 47 cents a kilowatt hour, we're not gonna, you know, we're gonna give you price certainty for the, like, you know, probably with, let's say pegged to inflation, but going from 12 cents to 47 cents is out of the line.
So I think when it comes to a feasibility study, I've heard a couple of things that, maybe say absolutely. First of all, you're not looking for any sort of true on commitment from us at this point. You're not looking for some sort of tax break, the other things you said free. Essentially, that you've got grant money to do feasibility study, so you're not coming to us looking for $15,000 to do a feasibility study. So those are great things. I appreciate that. Thank you. I, for one, support a feasibility study on this. I think it'd be a foolish statement to say, no, don't do it, right? It doesn't make any sense, don't do it. And I think with the 3 organizations that we have here that work together under the same umbrella, I think between those 3 organizations, we can definitely come up with some ideas for locations and help with that feasibility study. I think at this point, does anybody here not want to support this?
No, I think it's worthwhile.
I know this is apple pie right now, but why not? But I mean, we don't want this, there is some urgency, some time sensitivity. We want to get these done within the year. And we're talking about 8, it's putting some pressure on the engineering firm as well as our county partners. Shane and his team, you know, as I said, have been great to work with to look at those pieces that they're best equipped to help us with. But the deliverable here is a report.
Yeah. Well, and I think it checks another box. It's the one thing that we've heard from the public all along during pilot public hearings and things like that is, when do we get that? When do we get this electricity? When do we get the benefit of the cheap stuff? So yes,
As soon as we're able.
yeah,
You know, so
well,
let's do it.
that's it. So infrastructure. That's
So your time frame is the end of this year? Month and a half?
No. We just received word, in the beginning of September, I think.
They've got like 10 months.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
But realistically, any businesses or anything that you have or residents that you can get in with that that, hey, I'm open to, leasing my land for solar, we want to know that, because rather than having some, other solar company come in that was going to come for a pilot and send it everywhere else, we want to know those people ahead of time so that we can get them to take charge rather than, again.
So I think that's part of our duties, right? So as we're talking to the people we talk to, and we're sitting at meetings or we're networking, if somebody says something and you hear the word solar, should pique your interest, and we can get that back to Tyler or John, who can then forward it on to Shane. And
We're getting the flyers, $1,500 per acre per year, it's the same. It's just whoever you're going with as a company.
Right.
Okay, yeah, just know that the fine print is that the benefits ain't gonna stay here, right? And thank you for the opportunity to share this with you.
Thank you.
thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other questions for these fine gentlemen? All right. And I assume there's been no pushback from any community or anything saying, don't do this?
No,
Yeah, okay.
and it is hard because you don't want to go too public with it, because then every landowner is going to say, yeah, sign me up for $5,000 per acre, or if we start talking with them, oh yeah, we know what you're doing, jack it up, it's,
You just want that.
I know.
So, but great, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome to stay, but you're not required to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great.
All right, well, thanks, board, for allowing us to rearrange the agenda a little bit.
Do we have the folder for the bills and the side?
Thank you.
Good call, Taylor.
I still have it in here.
Good call. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There aren't any sites that jump out at me.
We've picked, like, Versailles landfill would be an ideal site. The problem is that 5
5-mile
miles
radius.
is rough. We've talked with Brisbane, North Norwich, and we've proposed those as potential sites. Again, that 5 miles is,
Yeah.
that's the rough part.
Move the ball flats, agree. They play all the time.
Mhm.
At another location. That can be political suicide.
It's also short of, the
Acres.
acres.
Yeah.
used.
It feels huge when you're down there, though, I'll tell you, when you're at the, all the tents for the festival, and then they got the car show all the way down by home plate. It feels like a long walk.
Call me later about the schools.
Basically using it for.
Is it a 3 companies?
Great.
Again, then
Tell
you're
her.
a 5-mile issue.
Is it 5 miles?
For what?
That's far from Green.
Is it? Yeah.
It's closer to Coventry. And Coventry's
Silo
open.
property, yeah, silo property. But, yeah.
Yeah.
We racked our brains for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was expecting him to say 3-4 acres. Because that's what I was, micro gets small, right? But no, it's really what it serves is small.
Yeah.
It's a microcosm of,
Yeah.
Right.
Know where there's 80 acres?
it's a lot of acres, but
No 80 acres in a foot.
we explored that.
Would that buy us a timer?
Oh, Tyler's back. Didn't even realize you.
Yeah, sorry, no, I'm back.
All right, good. All right, pilot updates.
Okay, we'll go through here. First thing we have on here is just an IDA audit results. I'm just going to rephrase that as an IDA follow-up from the audit that was done previously in 2022. And to look at our pilots from 2020 to 2021. We met with them earlier this week, so I don't have a complete summary of findings. I kind of just zipped through it. We'll have a more comprehensive summary by the end of the year. Good news is that we're better than we were, but we do have some more work that we need to do. But we do kind of have a good, feeling confident in our path forward and developing some new procedures on, when a pilot application comes in, X, Y, Z, what we need to do, process of which to do it, and making sure we just dot our I's and cross our T's. So feeling good about that. With that IDA Academy training, John and I went to the fall IDA Academy earlier this month down in Westchester. Ironically, the auditors that did our audit did a presentation on compliance, which was kind of neat, and they actually loved seeing us there. So I think that helped a lot. So that was good. Moving into our pilot programs, the first one here in Norbit Solar Farms, there's no action that we're going to take on that today. Public hearing was rescheduled for Wednesday, December 11th at the Norwich Town Hall. They are looking again to move relatively quickly once that public hearing is done, but we'll see what we can get accomplished before the IDA December meeting. The next one here, the Norwich Hotel, again, no action on that today. They're still working out some financial aspects of the project and still requiring some additional documentation for our attorneys in order to develop any sort of pilot paperwork to move forward. So that's still a work in progress. Hopefully we'll have another update on that at the next meeting. The last one here, Payne Solar. We do have some action on that today. Again, this is the solar project that is over in the village of Bainbridge. We have reviewed the public comments. Those are going to be at the public hearing several times. I have sent out the pertinent information to all the necessary parties. What we need to do today is adopt the secret resolution and then do a final resolution vote for all 4 sites. All those documents are included in your packet with you today.
Okay, need a motion to adopt the secret resolution for Payne Solar.
So moved.
Got first by Pete, need a second?
Second.
Second by RC, any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote.
Freeman, aye.
Ryan, aye.
Woodford, aye.
Bert and I. All right, need a motion to approve the Payne Solar project.
Do we need to do each one separately?
I believe
We probably should.
do, yes.
All right, so Payne Solar project number,
It's going to be site 1, site 2, site 3,
Okay.
site 4.
so need a motion to approve site Payne Solar project site 1.
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
Second by Zeno. Any discussion? I just want to say, I hope you all looked at the cost basis analysis that Tyler put together. You can expect that with every project going forward.
That was great.
That was
Beautiful snapshot,
It is.
yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Nice job.
Yep,
Yeah.
thank you.
And actually, Tyler, one of the, just as an aside, when Pete and I did the IDA Academy back in the fall, one of my notes was this exact exhibit.
Good.
So, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
And then he comes along and it happens. Voila.
Kudos, star to you. All right, hearing no other discussion, we'll vote.
Freeman, aye.
Ryan, aye.
Woodford, aye.
Bert and I.
We can fall asleep.
Motion to approve Payne Solar project site number 2.
So moved.
Oh, first by Ryan, second by Pete. Any discussion? We'll vote.
Freeman, aye.
Ryan, aye.
Woodford, aye.
Bert and I. Motion to approve Payne Solar project number 3.
So moved.
First by Ryan,
Second.
second by Pete. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote.
Freeman, aye.
Ryan, aye.
Woodford, aye.
Bert and I. Need a motion to approve Payne Solar project number 4.
So moved.
Second.
Notice a trend.
I want to win this.
Any discussion? Okay, we'll vote.
Raymond,
Zeno,
Brian, I.
Clifford, aye.
Bird and I. All right, 4 for 4.
Perfect.
Would it have been crazy if we voted one of them down? All right. Good. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate y'all coming. So we had form to do that today. The Economic Development Director report. Tyler?
Yeah, so purchase of the preferred mutual update. As Brian mentioned earlier in the meeting, we did close on that building. We closed on Friday, the 15th, just this past Friday. We have gotten the Dyson and water and everything switched over, so we're all set there. The other thing we've been reviewing is obviously when Preferred Mutual owned the building, they had a lot of service contracts associated with it, from elevator service, generator service. So they had quarterly, annual, inspections on all that stuff. So we've been reviewing those contracts. The one that we want to discuss today that we really didn't want to lapse is the fire alarm system. So Siemens has the service that they've done with that. They were grateful enough because we closed on Friday. Our meeting was today. A little bit of a per diem, so to speak, until we decide on an annual contract. The price on that is $3,625.99. That is for a year. That includes obviously the fire alarm monitoring, an annual fire alarm inspection, and a semi-annual visual fire alarm inspection, which is all needs to be done in order to be compliant with that building. We have not gone out to seek any other additional service contracts or anything like that, just because of the interest of time, but wanted to present that to the board before obviously signing a long-term commitment with that.
Full disclosure, I was here last week, like Thursday, I think it was. We closed on Friday on the building. Our contract with them ended Friday, technically. We were having a conversation. What do we do? What are we going to do? John was nice enough to make a quick call to Siemens. They offered to extend the contract on a per diem basis at the time. One of the issues was expiration of that contract price went up. If we didn't make that phone call. So in order to keep that pricing, we would need to approve this contract at this time. Again, it's a safety issue. We don't want to buy a building and not protect it.
Well, down the road, if potentially it's a visitor center, it's probably even makes it more important.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I move that we enter into the 1 year time.
It's a 1-year commitment, yep.
second,
Okay, first by RC, second by Pete. And any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote.
Raymond,
Zeno,
Brian, I.
Clifford, aye.
Bird eye.
The other, like I said already, there's a security system, a generator, and elevator services. We'll continue to do some homework on those. We didn't feel like those were, an immediate thing we need to take care of. Obviously, the doors are locked over there, so security is somewhat set. But we'll bring some more information related to those services at the next meeting and kind of have a discussion from there. We have contacted every company that has served Preferred Mutual over the last several years. So we at least have gotten that relationship going, but we can shop around a little bit on some of that stuff. Okay. Also related to that building, the Restore New York grant, the city of Norwich, Eric was able to submit a letter of intent for that. That letter of intent was approved, so we're able to go to step 2 of that grant process. That is due on December 20th. So myself, Sharon from the place, and Eric have already started the narrative piece for that grant. So everything is moving along with that smoothly at the moment.
Do you need a letter of support from us or anything?
So that was next. We're going to start collecting letter of support. I don't think it would hurt to yeah.
It may be from some of the business, of course.
And we have
Essentially, it's our application.
Right.
Yeah.
Support.
So we have a couple different businesses to reach out to, school districts, we have a list that reach out for that. So, yep. Any questions on any of that?
No.
Okay. And that's all I have for the report today.
All right, great, thank you. New business, so public hearing procedures. It's been a little bit of a hot topic for us since our last couple of public hearings, because of the expectations of the community of what takes place at a public hearing versus what actually takes place in one of our public hearings. what the laws are behind that, what protocol is. Basically, we had a short statement we would read, and it would immediately put the community on, I would say, in a bad mood, right? Because basically it said, you can ask all the questions you want, we're gonna sit here and stare at you, was the long and short of it. Which is tough to do, especially if you're sitting at the head of the table looking out at all these people who have legitimate good questions, right? And most times deserve a legitimate good answer to their question. And we try to do that through follow-up and whatnot. And I'm sure those rules are put into place for a specific reason. It's to prevent issues in a public hearing, things of that nature. So we've talked, are we doing it correctly? Is what we're reading good enough? I think we all felt that it wasn't good enough. So RC was kind enough to kind of run with that after watching the 2 public hearings in Bainbridge, did some research, put together a document that really got into more detail as what the expectations are and what can be done and not done in a public hearing. The auditors also fed us some information on that as well. Yeah, so I think with those 2 things combined, we sent it out after the last meeting, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I think with those 2 things combined, we can at some point, sooner than later, go to our attorney and say, is this the document we want? Once we get the final audit back and it has recommendations in there for things like that, we'll do that. And they'll put together a legal document that we can read. We can also post ahead of time. There's no reason you can't disclose it ahead of time, right? So people know what to expect before they show up, hopefully, those that read it. But that's where we are with that. And I wanted to have a little bit of a discussion about that today because RC did do some work on it, and I thought it was important that we had that discussion. Does anybody have anything to add to that?
I did do a little more research into general municipal law, and the section that our public notice references really is generically related to the financial assistance component. It's really no specifics, but one thing our hearing notice does say, it does talk to the nature and the location of the project. And that little item that I put together does allude to, we're not really here to make land use decisions, although our public notice does.
Makes you feel that way.
And actually, our seeker resolution that we did just a little while ago, if you notice right at the last page or the last line on page 49, it does talk about the nature and location of the project. So we want to just keep that in mind as we go forward, because we don't want contradictory messages.
It almost gives a little bit of a perception that it's our project. And we're approving the company to do the project. That's not what we're doing.
But really, any land use decisions, the thing that they put together does allude to, any land use decisions are the local town, village, and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's a common assumption too that we can stop a project. We can't stop a project, right? They
Well,
do
we
whatever
can-
they want, yeah.
Yeah, we're a funding source, and whether it makes sense financially or not is what our decision is all about. It has nothing to do with anything.
So we're hoping to clear some of that up by being more specific in our public hearing rules.
I applaud you for doing that. The more clarity we bring, the less negative, the added.
Yeah, and actually looking at the first public hearing that Sal sat in on, it was an hour long, and it was kind of painful. And part of that was just the misconception of the purpose. So it was just trying to lay down what some of the ground rules are, if nothing else. And then Brian did a great job. Brian actually had some help in his public hearing.
Yep.
And it worked out pretty well. member of the audience actually did a stellar job in answered many of the questions that came up, which were more technical in nature for the project itself, not related to the tax abatement implications here and stuff. No, that's good, and timing is good with the auditors.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Or we can work it.
Anything else on that? Great. Do we have a need to go into executive session? Okay, perfect. Need a motion to adjourn?
Sorry.
Perfect. We'll vote.
Ryan,
Good for that.
Bert, aye. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time today.
are you excited because we ended?
We started on time and ended right on time.